What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick, and welcome to another episode of Short Circuit Sports, the channel that brings you weekly, lightning fast coverage of the sports world from a fan's perspective. I cover anything and everything from breaking news to scores and predictions with analysis to bring you guys anything that you might have missed in the world of sports. That being said, this particular episode is going to focus solely on the NFL. A lot of stuff happened in football this past week. If you guys are not currently aware of a lot of the moves that went down around the trade deadline, check my last episode. I hope that you guys would find it helpful. Or if you guys are interested in the NBA, I covered a bunch of stuff in the last episode as well. So go ahead and check that out if that is what you would prefer. That being said, we got a lot going on this episode. We got some Thursday night football recap, along with pretty much a quick rundown of everything that's going on in Week 9. We also got the NFL standings as they currently are. You'll probably start to see a bunch of teams do a handful of things differently now that their record is either as good or as bad as they thought they would be. We also just got a surprise breaking news signing a couple days ago that I kind of find interesting that they would make this move. So you don't want to miss any of those details. And you also got my top 5 games to watch and look out for and their predictions for Week 10. So do not miss any of that. As always, please subscribe, like this video, turn on your notifications. The whole thing really helps me out, really helps out the channel, and I would really appreciate it. So without further introduction, stay plugged in, stay charged up, and let's get into it. On Thursday Night Football, the Chicago Bears defeated the Carolina Panthers 16-13 in Chicago in what has been another disappointing primetime game on Thursday. The NFL really needs to do something different in terms of how they decide the scheduling, or looking ahead certain weeks and realizing that, this game needs to be flexed out. Because in no world should the 2 worst teams in the NFL be playing in primetime for the entire world to see. Considering that both of these teams are technically in the running for the first overall pick, it really is not surprising that this game ended up being a low-scoring affair. There was really only one offensive touchdown the entire game by D'Onta Foreman. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And the only other touchdown in this game was a punt return for a touchdown. So just an overall really ugly game, really slow between 2 of the worst teams in this league. However, in the end, it all works out for the Bears. They get the W. But because they own the Carolina Panthers first-round draft pick, their odds of receiving the number 1 overall pick are now even higher. As for the Panthers, they do not have a first-round pick. They traded this year's pick to the Bears in order to trade for last year's number 1 overall pick in this past draft in order to select quarterback Bryce Young. But they do drop another game with Young under center, and I know that it's early in his career. It's his rookie year. He's been hurt. Carolina is just bad offensively and in the offensive line. But at some point, you hope that he would start showing signs of being the first-round talent that we all thought he can be. He just hasn't shown it yet. And if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, seeing CJ Stroud light the league on fire in Houston, it really just has to make you sick to your stomach, especially when you realize that Carolina could have taken Stroud instead of Young. So hindsight really is 2020. Um, but yeah, just an overall ugly game. Bears, well, a team had to win this game, and I guess kudos to the Bears for pulling it out. Moving on to some Week 9 recap, where I officially went a perfect 5-0 for my weekly picks. First time all year I've gone perfect, so hopefully a sign of things to come. First game I properly predicted was the New York Jets losing to the Los Angeles Chargers in New York. My previous analysis really was that while I knew the Jets defense would limit quarterback Justin Herbert, I also realized that the Jets would have a lot more problems with quarterback Zach Wilson still under center, create more problems than solutions. So the Jets also have some questions about their offensive line and their ability to hold up under pressure from above average D linemen, and the Chargers just happen to have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa. So just a very ugly game for the Jets offensively. They did end up holding Justin Herbert to his lowest career passing yardage in a game for his career. So the Chargers defense really came up in this game, and they managed to pull it out against the Jets. And I think that the more the Jets lose, the less I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be coming back to save them. And they fall further and further behind the Bills and the Dolphins in that division. And if I wasn't sure before, I really am sure now. There's really no saving Zach Wilson being a starter. I don't care who you are or what your argument is. He does not need to be the starting quarterback for the Jets anymore. You're not only doing your team a disservice, you're doing your fan base a disservice, and you're doing Zach Wilson a disservice, just letting him sit back there and get pummeled week after week while he makes mistake after mistake. The second game I correctly called was the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Buffalo Bills in Cincinnati. I noted before that Cincinnati has been probably the hottest team in the NFL, and they aren't going to cool off anytime soon. I also mentioned that it would take an above-average defense personnel to slow down the Bengals' offense. And in this particular case, I was correct in that the Bills do not have it. Burrow ended up throwing for about 350 yards and 2 touchdowns, while also passing for an efficient 31 for 44. Bills quarterback Josh Allen did have a decent night, but he did throw an interception in this game, and the Bills just were sporadic and just very inconsistent all game long and couldn't put anything together. The third game I correctly called was the Philadelphia Eagles beating the Dallas Cowboys in Philadelphia. In my prediction for this game, I mentioned that Philadelphia's defense has just looked really good as of recently, and the way Dallas's defense has been playing, which, keep in mind, hasn't been terrible, but I also didn't think that they were going to hold up well against the Eagles' offense, and that's really just how it played out in this game. Jalen Hurts went 17 for 23 with a little over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also rushed for a touchdown in this game. And quarterback Dak Prescott had a really good game in this on this day. He had 370 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Star receiver CeeDee Lamb hauled in 11 catches for 191 yards. and yet the Eagles defense shut them down when they needed to in crunch time, and the Cowboys just couldn't get it done. Fourth game I correctly called was the Baltimore Ravens beating the Seattle Seahawks. The one thing I did not predict in this game was that the Seahawks would not show up. 37-3 was your final. I mentioned before in the last episode that the team that was able to limit the other team's run game would be the one that wins this game. And one team in this game had 28 total yards rushing, and the other was about 2 yards away from 300. And you do not have to be a rocket scientist to figure out which team is which. Shout out to rookie Keaton Mitchell, who led the Ravens in rushing with 138 yards and a touchdown. Way to burst on the scene. Fifth game I correctly called was the German game. The Kansas City Chiefs beating the Miami Dolphins in Germany. I originally thought this game was going to be a shootout. I thought it had the potential to be the highest scoring game in the entire season, and that was just not the way that it played out. I did mention that this game was probably going to come down to a one-score game. Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes did throw 2 touchdowns in this game. Miami quarterback Tua Tagovailoa threw for 193 yards and a touchdown. But the Chiefs defense came up big with a forced fumble and returned for a touchdown in this game. So that would ultimately be the difference here, and the Chiefs continue to build that lead in the AFC West. Next up, we have where we currently have where every team stands at this point in the season. Currently in the AFC, your division leaders are the Chiefs, Jaguars, Ravens, and Dolphins. Chiefs have a fairly decent advantage in the West. I don't see that changing anytime soon. The Ravens have a pretty decent lead in the AFC North. If I was the Ravens, however, I would be wary of the Bengals. They are one of the hottest teams in the NFL, and if the Ravens are not careful, I very well could see Joe Burrow and that Bengals offense making it a really tight race near season's end. In the AFC South, the Jaguars are currently leading that division by 2 games. Over the Houston Texans. However, if I'm the Jaguars, I would be a little wary of those Houston Texans. Quarterback CJ Stroud is playing like an offensive rookie of the year. He probably will be. He just set a rookie record for 470 yards and I believe 5 touchdowns. So if I'm the Jaguars, I really don't take that Houston team lightly at all. And for the East, the Miami Dolphins are currently leading the Bills by 1 game in that division. I do think that the winner of that division is going to be decided at the end of the season. I can't make a decision here. While the Dolphins do have the lead, the Bills have shown that they can beat the Dolphins, as they've already done it in this at the beginning of the year. Like I said before, if the Jets continue to lose, I don't think that Aaron Rodgers is going to come back to save them. And overall, it's just going to be a really tight division race down to the wire. Moving on to the NFC, your division leaders are the Philadelphia Eagles, Detroit Lions, San Francisco 49ers, and New Orleans Saints. Starting in the East, the Eagles have been the most dominant team in the NFL, regardless of whether or not it's been a blowout or a slugfest. Down to the wire, they've figured out a way to win. Jalen Hurts is probably the front runner to win MVP right now. and I don't see that stopping anytime soon. The Eagles are my pick to win this division. No matter how good the Cowboys think they could be, I think the only way they make the playoffs is if they win. They just have to win out and hope for a wild card. Moving on to the North, the Lions currently sit atop that division over the Minnesota Vikings. The Lions are probably one of the more consistent teams in the NFL. They are my pick to win this division. I would like to see how newly acquired quarterback Joshua Dobbs handles himself in Minnesota. He did look pretty good last week when he didn't even know his teammates' names. So it should be interesting to see how the Vikings play out the rest of the season. They will be getting star wide receiver Justin Jefferson back at some point. So if the Vikings can get hot, they might make a nice little run for the division. But against that Lions defense, I still have the Lions winning it. Moving on to the NFC West, the Niners and the Seahawks are currently tied atop that division. At the beginning of the season, it looked like the Niners would run away with it. They won 5 straight, and then they lost 3 straight, and the Seahawks won a handful. So, anything can really change at this point in the season. My pick for the division is still the Niners. I think that they are just way too talented, especially when everybody is healthy, but health is the key term here. So this division race could come down to the last couple of weeks of the season, but I do think that the Niners have what it takes to pull it out. And then finally, in the NFC South, the Saints and the Falcons currently are at the top of that division. Saints currently have a division lead of 1 game. If there is a division that's the worst in football, it's this one. This is one of those cases that I could see a division winner making the playoffs with a losing record. I do think that team is going to be the Saints. I think the Saints just have enough experience on both sides of the ball to really push through, make a playoff push that the Falcons don't. The Falcons do have a lot of inexperience on both sides. They are a very young team. And I just like the Saints quarterback play more than the Falcons. I trust Derek Carr more than I trust Taylor Heineke or Desmond Ridder, whoever is starting for the Falcons. I don't care. The Saints, I believe, have what it takes when healthy to pull it out against the Falcons. Moving on, we got a breaking news acquisition at some point this week. The Los Angeles Rams ended up signing former 2nd overall pick Carson Wentz to the team. This signing comes after former backup quarterback Brett Rypien filled in for an injured Matthew Stafford and really did not play well. Rams quickly make a move. I believe they cut Rypien. They signed Wentz. What's very ironic right here is that Wentz went in the same draft that the Rams drafted quarterback Jared Goff, number 1 overall. So they now have former number 1 and number 2 overall quarterbacks from the 2016 NFL Draft. Wentz is expected to come in and just be that primary backup behind Matthew Stafford. If and when Stafford gets hurt, Wentz will fill in. And if Stafford can't play, it'll be interesting to see how Wentz takes another starting role. He last played last year with the Commanders, but the Commanders ended up cutting him in favor of starting current quarterback Sam Howell. So it'll be interesting to see how Wentz handles Los Angeles. Should be interesting to see. Moving on, we got my top 5 games to watch this week. The Week 10 installment of Nick's Picks. I am currently 27-9. I'm liking how I'm picking this year. And after, like I said, I went 5-0 last week. Should be interesting to see what happens this week, right? At number 5, I've got the Minnesota Vikings beating the New Orleans Saints in Minnesota. I think that newly acquired quarterback Joshua Dobbs played really well last week, especially with not knowing anything about his teammates. And I believe he did not practice at all with the first stringers. So give him a week of preparation. I'm interested to see how he plays in this game. I have them beating the New Orleans Saints, and like I said before, I do like the Saints' experience on both sides of the ball. But I mean, if you look at their schedule, they have not beaten an NFL team with a winning record. Every team they've beaten so far probably will end up with a top 10 NFL draft pick by the end of the season. So the Vikings are certainly more trustworthy when it comes to beating um, actually good teams this year. Um, yeah, I just trust the Vikings more in this scenario. At my number 4 game, I have the Los Angeles Chargers beating the Detroit Lions by a field goal in Los Angeles. On one hand, you have a team like the Lions coming off of a bye, and they've also won 5 of their last 6 games played. They're one of the hottest teams in the NFL. And as of right now, are a playoff team. They are winning their division and are just overall one of the league's better teams. And on the other hand, you have the Chargers. The Chargers are one of the more inconsistent teams in the NFL, which is really weird to say considering a lot of people thought that they could win the division at the beginning of the year. And now they're fighting for a wild card spot. And it's so weird. They are so up and down. Their defense has been playing decently as of recently, but it was against the Bears and the Jets. And like I mentioned before, the Jets suck with Wilson. And at the beginning of this episode, you saw what the Bears did against the Panthers. They could barely beat them by a field goal. So the Bears are not the epitome of offensive success in the NFL. So I will say that the Chargers are probably the more desperate team in this game. If they win this game, they are firmly set in that wild card race. If they lose this game, they fall to really a middle of the pack wild card team. They really need this win here. And I will say that in the past, that when the Chargers are desperate, they somehow find a way to win. And I think that this is one of those Charger fluke wins that we could see where if they pull this out, everybody looks at them like, oh, maybe they're a playoff team. And then it's like, Chargers are going to Charger. I could very easily see this game going in favor of Detroit. Detroit has the number 6 passing offense in the league and the number 6 rushing offense in the league. So it's going to be a major test for the Chargers defense to see if they can hold up here. I think that the way they've been playing as of recently, and they are completely healthy, there's nobody on the injury report either. I think the Chargers have what it takes to pull this game out, but how they play for the rest of the season, I do not have any clue, and I do not think the rest of you have any clue what they're going to do. Moving on to my number 3 game, I do have the Cincinnati Bengals beating the Houston Texans, probably by a touchdown. I mentioned before that Cincinnati is they're a top 2, maybe top 3 NFL team right now. They are incredibly hot right now. They've won 4 straight, winners of their last 5 of 6. So quarterback Joe Burrow is playing at an MVP caliber level right now. Wide receiver Jamar Chase probably is in the running for Offensive Player of the Year. I think that the Bengals have the talent to win this game. However, I do think that they would be foolish to look past this Houston team. I mentioned before, probably offensive rookie of the year, uh, quarterback CJ Stroud, just playing absolutely out of his mind. Um, I mentioned the 470 yards and 5 touchdowns that he did last week. I would love to see what he does for an encore, and I am sure he would love nothing more than to pull off an upset of a um, AFC powerhouse, um, and show the world that maybe the Texans are a team to be reckoned with. So you never know what they're going to do here, and if they play like they have nothing to lose and they play with efficiency that CJ Stroud has shown that he can do, this game, it might be a lot tighter than people give it credit for. At my number 2 game, I have the Baltimore Ravens beating the Cleveland Browns in Baltimore. I mentioned before, Baltimore absolutely put the beat down on the Seattle Seahawks. They're playing. If the Bengals are the number 3 hottest team in the NFL, the Ravens are either 1 or 2. And they are just playing incredibly well. Lamar Jackson's playing like an MVP. Yeah, Cleveland, they have won their last 3 of 4, and they're certainly trying to be in the wild card race right now. But I think that the Browns just run into the Ravens at the wrong time in their schedule. It doesn't help that the Ravens have already beaten the Browns at the beginning of the season. I believe the final score was 28-3, and I feel like the Ravens are only going to get better if they stay healthy, which I believe will be the case. It is a divisional matchup. These two teams do play each other very well in most seasons, but that being said, I think that the Ravens are they're just too good right now. And at my number 1 game, I've got the San Francisco 49ers beating the Jacksonville Jaguars barely by a field goal. Starting with the Niners, I mentioned before, tale of 2 seasons. They started off the hottest team in the league, and now they're one of the coldest. They just came off of a bye week where they made a few moves. They got 2020 defensive rookie of the year, Chase Young, from the Commanders. They reunite Nick Bosa and Chase Young, formerly of the Ohio State University. I think that defense just is really, really good, especially when they're healthy. But obviously the questions are, how does the San Francisco offense go from here? Well, Brock Purdy gets a bunch of his weapons back healthy. He's got McCaffrey healthy. He's got Deebo Samuel now healthy. George Kittle is healthy. The question for this week was, are they going to get all-pro left tackle Trent Williams back? And if he does indeed come back for this game, I do think that the Niners have just enough offensively, if they put it all together, to really give Jacksonville a run for their money on defense. That being said, when it comes to the Jaguars, they have won their last 5 games. And they are, if the Ravens are number 1 and the Bengals are number 3 in terms of hottest teams right now, Jacksonville's number 2. Trevor Lawrence is playing at a very efficient level right now. He's not turning the ball over too much. He's doing just enough to help his team win. And running back Travis Etienne has been one of the hottest players in the league. He's closing in on 1,000 all-purpose yards, and he's got 8 total touchdowns. So I feel like the Niners are probably going to key in on Travis Etienne, and they're probably going to force Trevor Lawrence to make a bunch of plays, which we all know he can make, but against a defense like the Niners, if healthy, will probably be the indicator as to who wins this game. I feel like this game comes down to whoever has the ball last, and I trust San Francisco more than I trust Jacksonville. And that is all that we have left for this particular episode of Short Circuit Sports. If you like this episode, please subscribe, like this episode, turn on your notifications. Go ahead and comment down in the comments what you liked in this episode, what you disagreed with, what you want to hear more of in future episodes, the whole thing. It would really mean a lot to me, and I would really like to engage with the YouTube community. And if you guys like more and you want to hear more, please let me know. So without any more interruption to your day, stay plugged in, stay charged up, and I will see you guys on the next episode of Short Circuit Sports. Have a good one.